What if I told you that a man can look you in the eye, tell you he cares about you, spend time with you, and still never truly let you in? What if I told you that the most dangerous men are not the ones who openly say they don't want a relationship, but the ones who appear available while being emotionally locked behind invisible walls? This is the paradox of the emotionally unavailable man. He doesn't reject you outright. Instead, he gives you just enough to keep you guessing, to keep you investing, while never fully stepping into the vulnerability that real intimacy demands. A man who is emotionally unavailable isn't broken. He's not confused. He is executing, consciously or not, a survival strategy that protects him from vulnerability while still reaping the rewards of your attention, affection, and sometimes even your body. His behavior isn't random. It follows a clear pattern. And if you can decode that pattern, you gain the power to stop wasting your energy on men who are incapable of truly bonding with you. Here's the first truth you need to understand. Men don't process intimacy the way you do. For a woman, intimacy is connection. It's about trust, about peeling away layers until you feel safe enough to reveal your authentic self. For a man, intimacy is risk. To him, opening up emotionally feels like surrendering control. In evolutionary terms, it exposes him to judgment, rejection, and even loss of status. And status, whether he admits it or not, is the currency by which he measures himself in the world. An emotionally unavailable man is like a fortress. He has built walls around his vulnerability. From the outside, it may look like confidence, independence, even charm. But if you study his behavior closely, you'll see the cracks. He avoids deep conversations. He changes the subject when feelings come up. He keeps you close enough to feel his presence, but distant enough that you never touch his core. You think you're moving forward, but you're actually circling the same perimeter of his defenses. And here's where most women get trapped. You start believing that if you just give him more patience, more love, more loyalty, eventually those walls will fall. You imagine that your devotion is the key to unlocking his heart. But let me be brutally honest with you. That is not how male psychology works. A man does not become available because you wait longer. A man does not become emotionally invested because you prove your worth. If he is emotionally unavailable, your devotion only makes it easier for him to maintain the status quo. Think of it like this. Imagine you're negotiating with someone who has no intention of selling. You keep raising your offer, thinking that the right price will finally make them accept. But they're not even at the table to sell. They're at the table to enjoy the attention, to see how much you're willing to give. That's what it's like with an emotionally unavailable man. The more you invest, the more comfortable he feels taking, all while knowing he will never make a real commitment. Now, let's talk about the hidden signs, because these men don't announce themselves. They don't say, "I'm emotionally unavailable." They present themselves in ways that feel almost perfect on the surface. One of the biggest signs is inconsistency. He might give you moments of deep connection, intense eye contact, words that feel profound, nights that feel unforgettable. But then he withdraws, disappears, or suddenly acts cold. This push and pull isn't random. It's a cycle. He engages just enough to keep you chasing, then retreats to re-establish control. Another sign is his relationship with time. An emotionally unavailable man is always vague about the future. He'll say things like, "Let's see where this goes," or "I'm just taking things slow." On the surface, that sounds rational, but underneath, it's a strategy to keep you suspended in uncertainty. He keeps you emotionally invested without ever planting roots. Pay attention also to his past. If every story he tells about relationships involves betrayal, drama, or crazy exes, That's not an accident. That's his way of framing himself as the victim and excusing his unwillingness to open up again. What he's really saying is, don't expect me to risk vulnerability. I've already decided it's too dangerous. And here's the cruelest part. His emotional unavailability is not always obvious in the beginning. At first, it can even feel like he's more attentive than other men. He may flood you with charm, humor, and intensity. But this is not true intimacy. It's performance. It's the opening act designed to draw you in before he retreats behind his walls. You may already have felt this. You may have sat across from a man who makes you laugh, who makes you feel wanted. And yet, deep down, you sense a distance you can't close. That unease is not your imagination. It is your instincts detecting that something is missing. Your feminine intuition can feel when a man's heart is not fully in the room with you, even if his body is. So the real question becomes, why do so many women stay? Why do intelligent, strong, capable women end up giving months or even years of their lives to men who are emotionally unavailable? The answer is simple, but hard to swallow. Because you're responding to the intermittent rewards. When he withdraws and then suddenly gives you a taste of affection, your brain gets hooked. It's the same mechanism that makes gambling addictive. You keep pulling the lever, hoping the next pull will be the big win. But unlike a slot machine, in this game, the house always wins. Because an emotionally unavailable man is not risking his heart. You are. And the longer you play, the more of yourself you lose. Here's the truth you need to anchor in. His emotional walls are not yours to break. They are his to dismantle. And most men never do unless forced by life-changing pain or a conscious choice to evolve. That means your power does not lie in waiting for him to change. Your power lies in recognizing the signs early, stepping back, and choosing not to play his game. Because when you stop giving your energy to unavailable men, something shifts. You reclaim your time, your attention, your feminine power. And suddenly, the men who are capable of true intimacy, the men who are ready to meet you in vulnerability, can finally see you. But if you're entangled with an unavailable man, those men pass you by. The greatest mistake is believing that you can turn an unavailable man into the partner you want. The greatest strategy is realizing that his unavailability is your signal to walk away, not your challenge to conquer. If this unfiltered truth makes sense to you, then you belong here. Subscribe now, because in our next video, I'll reveal the one psychological test every man uses to decide if a woman is worth his full investment, and why most women fail it. When you strip away the illusions, you begin to see emotional unavailability for what it really is. Not a mystery, not a challenge, but a shield. A man who is emotionally unavailable is not incapable of connection. He is unwilling, and unwillingness is a choice, not a flaw. This is the distinction most women miss. You think you're nurturing a wounded boy back into wholeness, when in truth, you're dealing with a man who has chosen self-protection over intimacy. Now, let's go deeper into why this happens. Men are conditioned, both biologically and socially, to associate vulnerability with weakness. From childhood, they are told to toughen up, not to cry, not to depend on others. Over time, this conditioning creates a subconscious equation in the male brain. Emotions equal danger. So when a man becomes emotionally unavailable, what he's really doing is ensuring that no one gets close enough to see the parts of himself he associates with weakness. But here's the paradox. While he avoids vulnerability, he still craves connection. He still wants affection, attention, and validation. This creates the push-pull dynamic that defines emotionally unavailable men. He approaches you when he feels the desire for closeness, but the moment that closeness threatens his protective walls, he withdraws. Imagine a man standing at the edge of a pool. He steps in just enough to feel the water, but the moment it reaches his chest, he retreats back to the safety of the edge. That's the rhythm of his behavior. And this rhythm is designed to confuse you, because in those moments when he does step into the water, when he opens up for a brief conversation, when he shares a detail about his past, when he looks at you with vulnerability, you feel the spark of hope. You believe the walls are finally coming down. But then, just as suddenly, he pulls away, leaving you questioning what went wrong. You replay conversations in your head, wondering if you pushed too hard, if you said something that scared him off. But it was never about you. It was always about his threshold for intimacy. Let's analyze the effects this has on you. Because the real damage of being with an emotionally unavailable man is not just the time you lose, it's the erosion of your self-perception. You start to doubt your instincts. You feel like you're asking for too much, when in reality, you're asking for the bare minimum: consistency, communication, and emotional presence. But because he gives you glimpses of intimacy and then withdraws, you start to believe that the problem lies in your expectations. You lower your standards without even realizing it. Think about it. How many times have you caught yourself saying, "At least he texts me sometimes," or "At least he spends time with me when he can," or "At least he told me he cares"? That, "at least," is the voice of compromise. It's the quiet signal that you're settling for breadcrumbs because you've been conditioned to believe that a feast is too much to ask for. But here's the brutal truth. A man who is truly available doesn't leave you guessing. He doesn't ration his affection like it's gold dust. He doesn't give you glimpses of intimacy and then retreat into silence. A man who is emotionally available makes his presence felt in your life consistently. He doesn't fear the future. He builds toward it with you. Now, let's go further into the psychology of why unavailable men are so magnetic. Because if you're honest with yourself, you'll admit that there's a strange pull toward them. Why? Because emotional unavailability creates tension, and tension is addictive. When a man gives you just enough to light the flame but withholds the fuel, your mind fills the gap with fantasy. You imagine what it would be like if he finally opened up, if he finally chose you fully. That fantasy becomes the hook. You're not addicted to him. You're addicted to the potential you've created in your own mind. And here lies the trap. Potential is an illusion. You're investing in a version of him that does not exist. You're loving the man he could be, not the man he is. And while you wait for that version to appear, the real man, the unavailable man, continues to take what he wants without ever giving you the depth you crave. Let me give you an analogy. Imagine buying a ticket to a theater show. The lights dim, the music starts, the curtain rises. You sit there expecting the actors to walk on stage, but the stage remains empty. Occasionally, someone peeks out from behind the curtain, waves, and disappears again. And yet, you keep sitting there, hoping the real performance will begin. That's what it's like with an emotionally unavailable man. The show you paid for never starts, but you remain seated because you've already invested time and energy. So, what's the strategy here? It's simple. You must train yourself to stop mistaking glimpses of vulnerability for genuine availability. Stop rewarding inconsistency with more loyalty. The moment you notice the pattern, the push-pull, the vagueness about the future, the emotional walls, you must recognize it as your signal to disengage. Not because you're punishing him, but because you refuse to gamble with your own heart. The power dynamic shifts the moment you do this. Because while emotionally unavailable men thrive on your uncertainty, they have no power over a woman who refuses to play the guessing game. When you stop chasing clarity from him and instead demand it through your actions by stepping away, you expose his strategy for what it is, a shield he uses to protect himself at your expense. And let's be clear, your withdrawal doesn't magically make him change. In fact, it might make him chase you for a while, offering more glimpses of intimacy to pull you back in. But remember, those are not signs of transformation. They are signs of desperation. Because an emotionally unavailable man doesn't want to lose your energy supply. He wants your presence without the responsibility of true connection. So when he comes back with sweet words, late-night calls, or promises of change, ask yourself, is this consistency, or is this another glimpse designed to reset the cycle? Your answer to that question determines whether you step into power or remain trapped in his pattern. And that brings us to the real turning point. Are you willing to let go of the fantasy of what he could be, so you can embrace the reality of what you truly deserve? Because until you make that decision, you will always be at the mercy of unavailable men. But once you make it, once you draw that line, you'll find yourself walking in a different world. A world where emotionally available men no longer seem boring or predictable, but deeply attractive. A world where your intuition is no longer clouded by doubt, but sharpened by clarity. And here's the next uncomfortable truth you need to hear. If you keep attracting emotionally unavailable men, it's not an accident. It's a reflection of your own patterns. So the question becomes, what is it inside you that's drawn to the chase, to the fantasy, to the intermittent rewards?